My game of the day from round 8 of the Baku Olympiad is the encounter between Baadur Jobava, representing Georgia, and Ruslan Ponomariov, representing Ukraine. This was the board 1 match. Well, many of you that follow my PowerPlayChess YouTube channel will know that I'm a big fan of Baadur Jobava. He's a real maverick, great attacking player, very original in style, and it's a good clash because Ponomariov is more formal in his style. And, well, this certainly came out in the game. So, Jobava with the white pieces, and he played, well, his special variation. If white plays bishop g5 here, this is the so-called Veresov variation, seen occasionally, but Baadur likes to play bishop f4. This is his variation, although looking back into the database, I see that this was played first by the Irish player, famous Irish player, James Mason, in the 19th century. And even Alexander Alekhine played this a couple of times. I know Baadur is a real fan of Alekhine, so maybe that's where he got his inspiration from. Well, many moves are possible here for black. You know, you can play e6, c6, a6, bishop f5, and I think this is one of the strengths of this move, bishop f4, that suddenly black is on his own. There are no sort of forcing moves here. You know, you have to start making it up. But, of course, Ponomariov could have anticipated this variation and quickly played c5, which is a very logical move. e3, supporting the pawn. And, well, one can play e6 here, but the problem is you already have to face this move, knight b5. It's very, very crude. A knight is going to land on c7. So black has to play knight e6, and already that knight is rather misplaced on a6. So, well, Ponomariov took and then played a6 to prevent knight b5. Bishop d3. So this is, it looks like a normal Caro-Kann exchange variation where the knight has come out to c3 instead of a pawn going to c3. It's not clear that the knight is wonderfully placed on c3, actually, because to get sort of into the game, it very often has to sort of reroute via e2. And it also means that sometimes the d pawn lacks support. Nevertheless, as we'll see, there can be advantages to playing the knight out to c3. So knight c6. And now, well, yeah, knight e2. I would much prefer to have my knight on f3, looking at the outpost on e5. The problem is after bishop g4, this pin is very awkward to meet. So that's why the knight has to go to e2, but it's not the best square, I have to say. And here, well, I think a very sensible move for black is to play bishop g4 before playing e6 to get that bishop outside the pawn chain. And Baadur has had this in several games, actually. Well, white throws the kingside pawns forward, and I mean, this is a very double-edged position, but it's certainly nice for black to have got rid of that bishop, and it also means, you know, you can use the c-file to attack, and that's often what's happened in these games. But of course, you know, with these pawns advanced, then white obviously has some initiative on the king side. So double-edged situation. But instead of bringing the bishop out, Ponomariov played e6. So that blocks in the bishop, but it's a very solid move, and also a decent way to play. So is Baadur going to go queenside or kingside with his king? Well, he was very prudent and played kingside casting. I think it's probably a good decision, actually. Black's attack would be pretty easy if white castled on the other side. So, solid development from both players. h3, I think this is directed against knight h5, so it means that the bishop can maintain its position on this very nice diagonal. So both sides have castled. And now Ponomariov begins his initiative on the queen side. And this is a very logical move, knight e5 to bring the knight in to c4. And rook d1. Okay, so Baadur just building up in the middle. And here I'm not exactly sure what Jobava intended on knight c4. I mean, perhaps having played the rook to d1, perhaps he was intending just to drop the queen back. It's possible, although, you know, it's not the most beautiful situation for the queen. Seems to me that black has quite a nice queenside initiative here. Maybe rook c8, maybe queen b6, perhaps a5, b4. Perhaps he was intending to take and then shuffle the queen round to the king side, although losing that light squared bishop is obviously, well, doesn't do much for white's attack. Such a key piece. And of course, black can try to get things going on the b file, although, you know, one can defend this pretty easily. That bishop does a superb job of controlling b8, so not so easy for black to sort of double rooks on the b file. But I think that would be a very reasonable way for black to play. Queen b6 is also a decent move as well, connecting the rooks. Looks good. Knight g3. So now Jobava starts to sort his pieces out. So the knight heading towards the king side and, of course, opening up the e-file. And here, well, I think it would have been prudent to play rook e8 to guard that bishop, and that would have prevented Jobava's next move. And then maybe bishop e5, and, well, I like the bishops very much. So we've got an interesting game in prospect there. You know, black certainly has counterplay on the queen side. But instead, rook fc8. Now, I think this was a miscalculation by Ponomariov, because it allows knight f5. He took the knight, and rook takes bishop. So this is clearly looks very nice for white, but the problem is that now the rook is trapped on e7. And at first glance, this doesn't look very nice for white because, you know, for example, after knight c6, you can take the rook, or queen d8, one of these moves. But Ponomariov had missed the next move, bishop h6. Here's the shocker. And an easy move to overlook, actually. So white is threatening queen g5. And if black tries to do something like knight h5, then queen comes in. Okay, you can try and take this rook, but rook takes. And then something very simple like bishop e2 hits the knight. This should be winning for white. I mean, it's really no better move than to take, because queen g5 is threatened. Then queen h6. Knight is threatened. And now here's the point. This is what Ponomariov must have missed, that after knight e8, white can now take on f5, breaking through to the king. The problem is that there is a pin here. And I think that's the kind of tactic that's very easy to miss when there are so many pieces lined up on the third rank. If you move the knight back to d7, now this would prevent bishop f5 because the queen is now defended by the knight, but instead you can actually take the knight. Same problem, pin on the third rank. And if knight e4, which blocks out the bishop, and then you can take and play knight d5, once again, the pin on the third rank, and the knight, which didn't seem to be doing too much on c3, finds its mission in life and crashes through to f6. Ponomariov tried rook takes knight to at least eliminate that dangerous knight. And now, this is a really subtle touch. If queen takes f6, if queen takes knight, then the rook drops back. And actually, black is fine here. But instead, Baadur checked first, and only then took the knight. and with the king on f8 rather than g8, this makes a massive difference. It's very subtle. Well, let's try rook c7 again. The point is that I'm just going to take on f5. Again, that can't be taken because of the pin. And if rook takes rook, queen h8 is checkmate. There's the difference. Well, in fact, black is just completely lost here. I mean, white has various threats. I mean, bishop f5 is one threat. Also, rook e1 is a threat, just to take this bishop off. Ponomariov, after 18.5 minutes, played rook takes bishop, but after the simple pawn takes rook, he resigned. There's absolutely no defense here to white's attack. For example, if queen d8, rook e1, threatening rook takes bishop, and if queen takes rook, once again, queen h8 is mate. Or, well, rook e8, you can simply play rook takes pawn check, and queen takes queen, and that's the end of that. So, a spectacular little tactic from Baadur Jobava. He's so alert tactically. If you want if you want a complete report of round 8, then do check out chessbase.com, where there are loads of photos and other stuff, and do check out my video report of round 8 as well with all the news.